Let me pull up this story we got from the Daily Mail. Austrian clinic that ships abortion pills to the U.S. claims it has received thousands of calls from women, especially in southern states, wanting to stock up on the drug after SCOTUS's Roe v. Wade ruling was leaked. You know what's crazy about this? In the bill the Democrats tried to pass, it says there can be no restrictions on abortion via telemedicine. I was like, how do you do abortion over the phone? They prescribe you pills to terminate the pregnancy. I wonder what's going to happen, seriously, with the illegal distribution of abortion pills. I mean, people are going to do it. Women are going to, they're doing it now already. Is the government going to send out, state troopers or federal police to go and arrest these women for ordering stuff? Are abortion pills going to be treated like crack cocaine or something?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure what the exact surrounding legislation is going to be. I know according to some figures I've seen, there was as much as a 60% decline in the rate of abortions in Texas. So we know that restrictions will prevent them from occurring in some number of instances, and they are pretty effective. But of course, there are going to be some people who find a way around the law.
Yeah, and of those, what do we say, 60% reduction?
That's what I saw. Those are the numbers I saw.
A lot of those just might be unreported abortions happening now that aren't being reported.
So they go to a neighboring state.
Numerically, it can be tricky.
Let's have the feminist triggering conversation. Should men be allowed to abort their paternal responsibilities in a world in which there's unfettered abortion? So let me phrase. Obviously, I think the more conservative people would say, no, fathers should not abandon their kids. Under the pretext that women do, let's say the law is passed, abortion up to 9 months is legal, would you also need to codify that men could be like, I hereby abort my responsibility?
I mean, Lydia, as a woman.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure about that. I was just thinking about that. That is an interesting question. I do think that if a mother has the right, so-called, from the emanations and penumbras of the Constitution to execute their poor unborn child, that a father should definitely have some say in whether he has to support a baby. I don't know.
The idea is if it's like my body, my choice, and it's like, okay, if you then choose to have a baby and you could choose not to, which means killing the baby, then it is much less morally ambiguous for a father to say, I choose not to have a baby, because he's not killing it at that point.
Well, right? I think what's absolutely true about this is when something like abortion is legalized and normalized, you do see a breakdown of the family. So if a woman does not have the obligation to care for her own unborn child, what obligation does a man have to care for his child? And I think that there's a sort of consistency there, but then I would also say that it's a consistency towards the direction of evil, and two wrongs don't make a right. Ultimately, if fathers were able to abandon their children after they impregnated a woman without there being any potential ramification or any way for her to sue for child support, we would probably see even more abortions.
But how many progressive or liberal women do you think would advocate for men having the right to say, I have nothing to do with this baby?
It's a good question.
Not many.
Yeah.
They would want the child support. They would say, you owe me money.
Well, and that's why it's so funny when liberals are, this past week have been saying, well, then if you're going to force them to have kids, then the father has to be just as involved. And all the conservatives are saying, yes, absolutely.
No, I know.
It's
just keep arguing.
Again, it just shows just how kind of we're obviously it's not just limited to abortion. It happens with every single topic, but people just talk past each other and they don't really know what the other side actually wants.
It is the rule. It is a tendency of the right to not know the left's argument, but the rule is they typically do. And it is the rule on the left, they don't know the right's argument. That's why the left, there's this meme going around where it's like, it's a 4-panel comic where someone says, my religion says I can't do this. And the person says, good for you. Then the person says, my religion says you can't do this. And they say, F off. And I'm like, you realize that means no gay marriage in churches and no abortions at religious hospitals. Because if you're saying okay to someone who says my religion says I can't do this, no cakes for you,
yep.
no gay message cakes, no trans cakes, no abortions at religious hospitals, and no marriages at churches that say no. They clearly don't agree with that. They don't even know their own arguments.
No, they literally don't.
I like cake.
Well, also the thing that I love about this is all of these hot takes about how men should have to take care of their children if they get a woman pregnant. They'll tweet something like, well, if abortion isn't legal, then a man who gets a woman pregnant has a responsibility to stay with her and care for the child. Like, it sounds like something me disguised as a liberal would say. Like, hey guys, you know what I think? I think these men should have an obligation to take care of the child that they make. And they're like,
that's just marriage with extra steps.
Yeah, exactly.
I think if the man gets her pregnant, then he should swear an oath
Whoa.
till death do them part.
And you know what? I think he should financially provide for her, and she should have the opportunity to stay home and raise that child. I think she should be at home raising that child.
If conservatives want to ban abortion, then we have to have traditional marriage.
Like, oh no, anything but that.
Your terms are acceptable.
Yeah.
They're
Exactly.
arguing on your behalf for the next step of your argument.
I know.
Yeah.
That's why it's like, guys, the pro-choice side, which is like the literal traditional liberal types who are sitting there confused, like shrugging. They're left out of this, and the overt pro-abortion side, which is like late term, terminate the baby, whatever. They don't even know what they're arguing against. They're so far left, they can't see where the right is. So they've looped back and said, traditional marriage must be enforced if you take away our rights.
So there's this idea called horseshoe theory. I've coined a term that I call this merry-go-round theory. Eventually they just go so far to the left that they get to the right, but then they keep going back around to the left. It's not like they stay at a reasonable position.
Someone in the chat actually said, Seamus, 3 rights make a left.
So we need to get to 3.
Exactly.
That's the magic number.
It's kind of remarkable how the left has gone so far left, they've become racial identitarians, where they're actually just like now advocating for segregation. And they've begun advocating for traditional marriage as a point against conservatives who want. It's like
we'll show you.
They're going around again, merry-go-round theory.
When I think
the center stays there, just like watching it happen. Like
that
what
I
is
makes
guess
going
sense.
on?
the biggest part of the question is, do you want the babies to be able to be killed or not? Maybe for some people, but I think it's, do you want the government involved in these decisions? And
Yes.
I've always thought child support made sense. Like if a guy goes out and gets 5 women pregnant and then he just goes off to Santa Barbara and to live on the beach and smoke pot, like he has, he's created, like he has to follow through with what he's done.
If women have the right to terminate the pregnancy and the man says I'm out, then they have a choice to say, okay, me too. So this is the point.
Yeah, explain that a little bit. I don't quite understand.
If women have the absolute right to end a pregnancy because it's their body, then there is no legal argument for the man having any responsibility at all. The woman gets pregnant and she says, this is your fault, you got me pregnant. He says, you could always choose to get rid of it, have a nice day, and leave.
Well, we'd have a lot of unmarried pregnancies. If
And I got to be honest, I think the left would actually be okay with that.
I think in the long run, they would adopt that position because ultimately they'll support anything that denigrates the family or familial responsibility.
But there was a meme that said the reason they won't accept that position is because it takes power away from the woman. If the woman gets pregnant, she gets to choose whether or not the man is going to provide her or not. Right? So with marriage, you have 2 people who have to make an agreement. With the current laws, the woman can choose to terminate the baby or keep it, and the man has no choice whatsoever. So pro-choice people are not pro-choice. They're they're pro-abortion.
They're pro-abortion.
Because if they were pro-choice, it would involve the man's right to choose whether or not he wants to be a part of her family.
Well, I just see it as, because when I was covering the pro-abortion protests outside Alito's home earlier this week, I was calling them that. They were pro-abortion protesters are at this house, and some people were just saying, oh, you're being so disingenuous by calling them pro-abortion. They're pro-choice. And so the choice to do what?
Yeah.
It's like when the people are like, the Civil War wasn't about
slavery.
It's about states' rights.
States' rights to what?
Yeah.
No, exactly. And so, I mean, I just view it as that's what they're advocating. I mean, that's the whole. They're not.
Well, let's.
Can I make one point real quick?
No.
Okay. All right. Well then.
No. James, go ahead.
This whole point you just made here, where they would claim it was disingenuous for you to call them pro-abortion instead of pro-choice. That logic can be extended to literally any political position. I'm not pro-gun. I'm just pro a person choosing to have a gun. You have to call gun rights advocates pro-choice now. You can't call us pro-gun. You have to call us pro-choice.
I'm pro-choice on guns.
Yeah, exactly.
People should have a right to choose.
And I have no problem saying I'm pro-gun. I am pro-gun.
Yeah, exactly. Why won't they say pro-abortion? Because they know it's evil.
Right. We had in the Timcast newsroom some articles that were like saying pro-life, pro-abortion, anti-abortion, pro-choice, anti-choice, whatever. I don't know if we ever said anti-choice, but I was just like, I saw a few articles and I thought to myself, we shouldn't use pro-life or pro-choice. Those are political terms. We should just refer to the groups and what they advocate for in that time. So when the left goes out and like, we are pro-choice, and I'm like, no, you're pro-abortion, because I could name a million circumstances where you don't care about a person's right to choose anything.
Right.
Vaccine mandates is very obvious. And then say, yeah, well, pro-lifers aren't pro-life because they're for the death penalty, and I'm like, yeah, we're going to call them anti-abortion. If you're at a protest and you're like, abortion should not be allowed, you are an anti-abortion protester. Saying pro-life is a political term, and I'm not going to make an argument about what life means or what choice means. If you go out and you say, we want abortion, you're pro-abortion. If you say no abortion, you're anti-abortion. We're done. That's it.
Yeah, well, it's funny because they will usually try to use terms like anti-abortion as a smear, as if it's something to be ashamed of that I'm against abortion.
Oh, no.
They'll also use terms like pro-birth, like you're not pro-life, you're just pro-birth. I'm like, yes, you maniac. What is
Yeah,
wrong
of
with
course.
being pro-birth? Like,
Because they don't know what your argument is.
yeah.
And so they say, like, I just, when I see all these memes on Facebook, I'm like, it's so frustrating because they've never talked to a conservative about this. And then, so I can see this and I'll say something like, they'll say something ridiculous like it's about power and old white men. And then I'll say something like, actually, the majority of pro-life people tend to be
Women.
female.
That's right.
And it's actually really simple because there's slightly more women in this country. You can call it whatever you want. And then they'll say, you're a right winger. And I'm like, I'm just trying to tell you what they're saying because you're not talking to them.
Yeah.
But they don't.
When it comes to pro-choice, I think the reason that word got used because some people will say, I don't want an abortion, I'm not going to get one. But I don't think the government has a right to stop other people from deciding that stuff.
Does that
But
mean?
can I make a point here?
What
All
if you have a 5-year-old and you lose your job and you can't afford it anymore? Are you pro-choice?
Well, it depends on how you feel.
Well, should the
You mean-
government be involved in whether or not you strangle your kid to death because you're broke and can't afford
Oh,
the
that's a
kid?
good question.
What if you have a 9-month-old baby? Like it's been out of the womb gestation for 9 months, 9 months in fresh air, and then one day you're like, I have no money. Should
Goodbye.
you have a right to choose?
Oh, I think that when you say pro-life, it's implicit that it's involved only when you're talking about the abortion conversation. That's what
That's
that
why I
means.
said we won't use either in the context of these protests. Timcast.com won't say a pro-life protester or a pro-choice. We'll say anti-abortion or pro-abortion. Someone who shows up and says, I'm pro-life, it's like, it's a political term. And there are many areas of life you are not saying all life is sacred.
I would say, like, if I'm pro-choice, but I don't think the government should get involved, but I'd be happier if no one ever got an abortion. I'm not pro-abortion. I think abortion's horrific.
You're not pro-choice.
Well, I don't want the government to be like, you can't decide
Ian,
what to do with your
but-
body.
well-
So can I ask you, if you
Your
were
body.
someone who is in favor of the Second Amendment and strong gun rights, but you didn't personally own the gun, would we not still call you pro-gun? We wouldn't just say, well, he's pro-choice. He's pro-allowing to choose, allow someone to choose whether they're going to own a gun. Like, we don't do this.
Pro-2A.
Yeah, like we don't do this with any other political conversation.
The
You're either for-
pro-choice, yeah. Well,
You're
it's
either-
a
look.
second-tier conversation. It's a second-tier label already. The
You
abortion
wanna know why?
topic is already there
You want to know why they call themselves pro-choice?
because it sounds better than pro-abortion.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, because
Yeah.
abortion is like the actual procedure. Is
And also,
And-
a lot of
and-
people
horrific.
don't want to get abortions that feel like the government shouldn't be involved in the decision.
Pro-life sounds better than anti-abortion. Granted, pro-choice, in my opinion, sounds worse.
Oh, no,
Like
perfectly
pro-abortion sounds worse than anti-abortion sounds.
Yeah.
But these are political terms meant to garner support. I look at it this way. What does it mean to be pro-life in a general sense? I do not believe it encompasses all life. I certainly think there's an argument from conservatives about some people through due process forfeiting their right to life, the death penalty. I can understand that. But I don't think that is part of the conversation. So I don't like the term pro-life. It's a broad generalization.
Pro-life's an abuse.
Anti-abortion is fine. You oppose abortion. Seamus, are you anti-abortion?
Yeah, I am, and
Okay.
I'm fine with anti-abortion
that
as a
title.
label, but I still think pro-life is consistent because my desire to be anti-abortion, and it comes from an understanding that all human life is precious and sacred. So I'm just very pro-human life.
And so my issue is the conversation around the death penalty is not a part of the pro or
Yeah.
anti-abortion argument. So if there are protesters outside saying abortion should be banned, I'm not going to be like, interesting, the signs they're holding up send a strong message about the death penalty. Because it doesn't. You don't know their position on the death penalty based on them saying they're opposing abortion. That's why I'm like, if there was a protest for or against the death penalty, we'd say pro and anti-death penalty.
Well, yeah, exactly. So the pro-life only is in the reference of abortion is what that means. And pro-choice is only in the reference of abortion.
Nobody says... No leftist goes to an anti-death penalty protest holding up pro-life signs.
Right. If you were to go
I think, but
talk
all right,
about the
to
death
be
penalty.
fair, if that language was not already being used in the abortion debate, they probably would.
Well,
Yeah, maybe.
In the context that I've seen is that because I've been covering the southern border crisis a lot, especially since the last time I was on here. No one who advocates for what the Biden administration is doing, which is essentially opening up the southern border to illegal immigration. They're not going to say they're pro open borders. They're going to say they're pro immigrant. They're pro asylum seekers, even though when you break that down into who's crossing and how are they crossing, what are they doing after they illegally cross an international border, it gets into these word games. I will say though, I am pro breakfast burrito.
Oh, yeah.
Those
Yeah,
are
me
good.
too.
Same.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that.
How many?
Yes.
How many? What percentage of pro-life individuals, conservatives, do you think would take issue with being told they were anti-abortion and having that label on them?
That's a good question. I don't think anyone who's against abortion would be upset being called anti-abortion.
And I can
I
tell
could be
you-
wrong.
I can
I don't
tell you
know. I
outright-
can't speak for everyone.
I can tell you outright that when I say pro-abortion, they lose their minds. They say, "No, we're not."
Well, that's,
We're just
what I'm saying.
talking about-"
That's exactly what I've been experiencing these past few weeks on random Twitter.
This is
users.
what David Pacman tweeted. It says, "Where are the pro-abortion people?"
I saw that.
Oh, my
And
gosh.
then, Hassan made a joke, and he was like, "Me, I'm trying to do this." And then I screen grabbed it, and then he accused me of not understanding it was a joke. And I was like, I thought it was funny, actually, because other people took it seriously.
Yeah.
It wasn't me who took it seriously. I just screen grabbed it, and then he accused me of taking it seriously. But David's own followers took it seriously. But the point is, when they say, who are these pro-abortion people, they all go, we're not pro-abortion. We're just saying it should be allowed. And it's like, I'm not for drugs. I'm just saying everyone should be allowed to have them.
Well, but part of what was
What?
part of what was particularly hilarious about that thread that with Pacman was it wasn't just Hassan responding to it. There were many people in the replies getting a lot of likes saying things like, well, of course I'm pro-abortion, just like I'm pro any other medical procedure. What's wrong with abortion?
Right.
Just completely destroying his
Or the-
argument.
or the people saying, there are too many people and the world's dying. Why are you having kids anyway?
All right, settle down, Bill Gates.
Yeah.
Well, he got COVID. So. Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.